Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar for Honeywell RedLink wireless technology. First thing is, why do we want to use wireless? I think it's kind of obvious. A lot of things are wireless these days, as evident around your home or your business. But wireless technology solves a lot of problems. It makes it easier to install things in unique applications where pulling wires might be difficult to do. It also makes it oftentimes less expensive if pulling wires might be expensive in a situation. It tends to make things a little bit more flexible in terms of being able to move products around a building. So if you look around your office or your house nowadays, you have wireless stuff all over the place. Everything from your computer and the Wi-Fi to your garage door opener to your cell phone to your cordless phone to your video games. Everything is wireless. I counted the stuff at my own house last night, and it was like 37 different wireless things I had in my house. And I'm not even trying to be a wireless guy. That's just the way stuff is. If you start thinking about it, you realize how much wireless stuff you have in your own house. So why should HVAC and home comfort control be any different than everything else? I actually have wireless controls in my house for my HVAC, and I've had them for 8 years. So it's not like it's a new concept here, but there are definitely some new things that are making it a little bit more exciting these days. So Honeywell's wireless product is called RedLink. That's the communication network protocol that Honeywell uses. They developed it themselves. It started out with their security systems and then evolved over to the HVAC side of the equation. So it's a completely Honeywell-designed solution from top to bottom in terms of how these devices communicate with one another. It's very reliable. It works almost every single time. I know I have the slide says every time, but I'm sure I can find a situation where it wouldn't work. But 99-point-something% of the time it's going to work just fine, especially in a residential application. You're not going to have any interference with other wireless devices or with any Honeywell RedLink devices that your neighbors might have in their own home. This is kind of like your garage door opener. You train it to work with your garage, and when you come home from work and press the button, it doesn't open your neighbor's garage. Same thing with this. When I change the temperature on my thermostat, it doesn't heat up or cool down my neighbor's house, although some of us might like it to work that way. So it's reliable, and there's safety measures throughout the protocol communication that make sure that the communications stay reliable. So reliable and secure. It works in the 900 megahertz range, specifically 902 to 928. It's an open range. There's a lot of products that are in that range. But like I said, all of these RedLink devices sync to each other, so there's not going to be any interference with those other products. It is FCC certified, as are all wireless devices, and it does have the ability to frequency hop. So if there was a conflict, it'll simply switch to a different frequency and resolve that conflict. Like I said, it comes out of the security side of Honeywell. As you probably know, Honeywell is a huge company that has many different business entities. The security group has been using wireless technology for probably a decade, and this is an extension of that technology. They moved it over to the HVAC side of the company. There's at least 4 levels of integration here that are making this all work. So the first thing is the antenna diversity. What that basically means is every product has 3 antennas built into it, although you might not physically see 3, they're inside. But it physically has 3 antennas, so in terms of sending a message, you might have a device that is a broadcaster, and he'll send a message out on 2 different antennas, and then when it receives messages back from the device that's talking to you, it'll receive it on its 3rd antenna. Or it could be the other way around. If a device is primarily a receiver, he'll be able to hear it on 2 antennas and send it on another. So it just kind of gives you a little bit of diversity in terms of if an antenna was broken, you still have communication paths. It also allows you to have a little bit of flexibility in how you mount those things. Same thing with frequency diversity. So there's diversity on the antennas, there's diversity on the frequency. Like I said, these devices can choose different frequencies. If there's a potential conflict at one, they'll switch to another frequency. And it's fairly random, so it's hard to have interference problems from other devices. You don't want 2 devices conflicting with each other and then choosing a new sequence and always saying, okay, well, channel 1's blocked, let's go to channel 2. And both systems are trying to do the same thing to solve the problem. So it's a random sequence. So channel 1's blocked. Okay, we'll try channel 9. Okay, great. The other guy's trying to channel 2, so he'll be out of the way. And then the last levels of protection here are that the enclosures themselves were designed with the antennas in mind. So it's not like they added an antenna onto a thermostat, although it may look like that in some cases. But the enclosure design was taken into account as well. It is high power transmission, and it is more powerful than most other wireless devices. Like I said, each device, whether it's a thermostat or a piece of equipment, equipment that we'll talk about in a little bit. It has a unique identity, so everybody can find everybody. It's kind of like I have my own phone number, and you have your own phone number, and somebody else has their own phone number. Everybody gets a unique phone number. We can't both have the same phone number, because if we did and someone tried to call us, we both would get the message, and that would not be what we wanted. So everybody gets their own phone number. In this case, everybody gets their own unique identity if they're communicating on the wireless network. And there is, like I said, a random hop sequence, so if there is a possible interference, it will jump to another frequency. And you have up to 50 different frequencies, so the chances you conflicting with your neighbor are pretty slim, unless you have 50 Honeywell stats, and then maybe there's a problem. We'll find a way to solve that. If you have a power failure, whether it's because there's power failure in the home or whether it's a battery version of one of these stats and the batteries fail, in either case, when you resume power, they remember their identities, they remember who they're supposed to communicate to, and they resume communication immediately after having power restored. So like I said, Honeywell developed their own technology. Why did they develop their own technology? Well, one, they had it on the security side of the business, so to port it over probably made a lot of sense to them, right? And they have 10 plus years of design into that system, so they know exactly how it works and what its advantages are and what its disadvantages were. And they also looked at other technologies out of the market like Zigbee and technologies like that and realized that they would rather do it themselves so they can have the flexibility to make it work the way they want it to work. All devices connect with the touch of a button. It's kind of like a sync button, so it's not a complicated sequence of dip switches or anything like that. It all can be done with a button. You tell one guy, go into your sync mode. Tell the other guy to go into sync mode. They find each other. It's kind of like Bluetooth on your cell phone. You tell your system in your car or your headset to listen. You tell your cell phone to send the signal out. They sync up. Life is good after that. Same kind of thing there. There are some rules associated with these things. One of the biggest rules are you can't have things too close to one another. So the minimum between most devices is 2 feet. That's not a problem for most things. Having the thermostat 2 feet away from the furnace is not an issue. In fact, that's probably the reason you chose wireless to begin with, is because you had a long distance between the two. But maybe you have 2 pieces of equipment that are right next to each other, 2 furnaces, for example, and you want them to both have wireless. You don't want to put the 2 panels next to each other on the wall together. They got to be separated by a minimum of 2 feet. So that's just something to keep in mind. And as we go here, I'm going to try to keep looking over to look at some of the questions that might pop up. So bear with me as I look over at that screen. Life is good. No questions right now. Okay, we'll go back to the presentation here. Some devices don't have a minimum distance requirement between them. One of them is the personal comfort control, which is the bottom right-hand picture over there. We'll talk about that in a little bit. That's a mobile device that you walk around with. It does not have any minimum requirements, so if you're standing next to the thermostat for some reason, it's not going to be an issue. The outside air sensor does not have an issue, and the FocusPRO battery-powered wireless stat does not have an issue. But for the most part, 2 feet. So on the equipment side, it's usually 2 feet minimum. So in typical house, there's not really any limitations on where you can put these things. Yeah, if you're trying to put one in a commercial building and you expect it to communicate up 15 stories, that's not going to happen. But in your house where it's 2 or 3 story building, and the worst case scenario is you're going from the first floor to an attic or from the top floor down to a basement, you're not really going to have any issues with terms of distance. So there's no problem in that regard. This shows you some basic pieces of a non-zone system. We'll talk about zoning in a minute, but a non-zone system, you have more pieces than normal. Normally you just have a thermostat on a regular job, right? But with the wireless, I got to have a thermostat. And since he's wireless, my furnace isn't wireless, so something has to tell the furnace when to go on. The furnace needs wires to be told when to go on and off. So this thermostat talks wirelessly to an equipment interface module, or EIM, and that equipment module, as you can see in this picture here, is physically wired over to the furnace. So it's not 100% wireless, it's just wireless throughout the home. But at some point, even if it's just for 2 or 3 feet, you're going to have wires going from the controller over to the actual furnace or boiler or whatever it is you're trying to wire up to. And this picture on the bottom here is an outdoor air temperature sensor or a return air temperature sensor. They look pretty similar. The return air temperature sensor would be hardwired to the equipment. An outdoor air sensor would be wireless. There are multiple thermostats available for this. Here's 2 of them right here. These are the FocusPRO thermostats. So these should look very familiar to you guys. I'm sure you've used FocusPRO Honeywell stats before. These are the wireless versions. The good news is that they look and smell and feel just like a regular FocusPRO stat. So there's nothing special in that regard. If you know how to use one, you know how to use the other. You could have a hardwired FocusPRO stat in your house on the first floor and have a wireless one upstairs on your second floor, and it would look exactly the same to the users. They wouldn't know the difference. And then like most thermostats, they come in multiple flavors, programmable and non-programmable. Although our building codes are not pushing us to programmable stats, you can still get non-programmable if you needed it for some reason. So you can move these things around. You can mount them anywhere you want. They do have a mounting plate, so you can mount them to the wall. We'll talk about other ways you can do it as well. There's also the Prestige stat, which most of you probably heard of, and there's actually even a new one coming out this month called Prestige IAQ, which we'll talk about later. But let's talk about the regular Prestige first. This is what it looks like. As you can see, it is a color touchscreen stat. It comes in two flavors, color and non-color. Although most folks, if you're going to buy something like this, you're probably going to want the color screen, is my guess. It's a color touchscreen stat. It is wireless feature enabled. So what do I mean by that? Wireless feature enabled means that it's going to have some wires associated with it, but some other aspects of it will be wireless, and I'll show you that in a second on the wiring diagram here. Like I said, it comes in two flavors, color and monochrome. The color one is HD, high definition. So I don't know if you need high definition for your thermostat, but it's a pretty cool thing to have. It's a pretty good bragging rights thing with a neighbor kind of thing. You're not going to be watching a football game on it, obviously, but it looks pretty cool and it's very sharp. All these Prestige stats can handle 3 stages of heat, 2 stages of cooling, and they have a built-in humidity sensor in them, so they can enable a humidifier, or they can enable a dehumidification sequence on a variable speed furnace or on a fan coil. So when I say it's wireless, kind of, the FocusPRO stats were completely wireless. They talked wirelessly to the equipment, and that was it. The Prestige stat is only somewhat wireless. So by that I mean the stat itself physically has to hardwire down to the furnace. However, it can support some of the wireless accessories. So in this case, it supports a wireless outdoor air temperature sensor. And then on the left-hand side of the screen, the personal portable comfort control, which is a handheld device. So you can adjust your thermostat from anywhere, from your couch, from your nightstand, from your kitchen, wherever. That's what that guy's going to do. So the Prestige can talk to actually 3 different devices wirelessly. This is 2 of them, the personal portable comfort control and the outdoor air temperature sensor. But he would be hardwired to the furnace itself. Right? So let me jump back a couple screens for 1 second. The 2 FocusPRO stats are wireless everything. There's no wires on these stats at all. They get batteries put in them. They talk wirelessly down to the equipment control module by the furnace, and that's it. No wires at the stat. The Prestige is a little bit different. The Prestige requires wires to the furnace. However, the accessories are what the wireless part is. There's a lot of other cool parts to that thermostat. One of them is the ability to cut and paste from one thermostat to another. So it takes a USB input. You can use a thumb drive, a USB thumb drive, just like you would on your laptop or your computer. And you can copy all of the setup functions of that stat and then dump them into the next stat. So if you do a lot of projects that are very similar in nature and you want to set them all up the exact same way, you can do that with this copy and paste type feature. The programming is really nice for the end user. It's what Honeywell calls interview-based programming. So instead of getting a complex chart to look at, it basically starts asking you questions. You can look at the chart and do it that way if you're comfortable, and maybe the HVAC folks are, but the average homeowner is not. So the homeowner would say, guide me through the scheduling, and then it would simply start asking questions. What time do you wake up in the morning? What time do you leave the house? What time do you go to bed? Stuff like that. And then based on when you answer those questions, is going to be how it's going to set up your scheduling. So here's just an example of some things you can do. If you press the help button on any of the screens, it'll pop up another screen that describes to you what it means. So in this case, I press the help button. It says the thermostat can be programmed to display alert screens when the components will need to be replaced. So filter reminders, UV light reminders, things like that. So if you look at the screen over on the right-hand side, that's what it was asking you. Set up the times for the furnace filter, the humidifier pad, the UV light. If you don't know what that means, you press the help button and it describes it to you. Pretty straightforward. It's multiple languages. I don't know if anybody cares about French around here, but obviously we care about English, and some of our customers might need Spanish. There was a third wireless device that works with the Prestige. Like I said, there's the outdoor air temperature sensor. There is the portable comfort controller that you can take around with you, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. And then there is the humidifier option. So you can actually take a Honeywell TrueSteam humidifier, and you can get the wireless adapter for it. Now, just like with the furnace on the FocusPRO stats, the wireless receiver adapter has to hardwire to the furnace. Well, in this case, the wireless adapter wires to the humidifier. So just keep that in mind. So there's wires between the adapter and the humidifier, and those can be sitting right next to each other downstairs at the furnace. And that adapter talks wirelessly to the stat, and the outside air sensor talks wirelessly to the stat. And sometimes you might want to reset the humidity set point based on outside air. So all those things work together without any additional wires between them. But the thermostat still hardwires to the furnace. So in your typical house layout, this is what it might look like. This might be the north side of my building over here. And if you don't know, outside air sensors always want to be on the north side of the building because there's never direct sunlight in our hemisphere. So outside air sensor on the north side of the building. He is talking wirelessly over to the Prestige stat up here. The Prestige stat is talking wirelessly down to the humidifier, but there's still hardwire between the Prestige stat and the air handler or furnace. And there's still hardwire between the furnace and the air conditioning unit outside. Now, with that being said, I told you there's a new Prestige IAQ that comes out this month. Actually, I think it just came out. And that one's a little bit different. It does all the same stuff we just mentioned, plus it is wireless from the Prestige stat down to the furnace. It takes 2 wires. Those are just for power, so you can get them from anywhere with a transformer. So you can tap power off anywhere where that stat is and then be 100% wireless down to the furnace with the new Prestige IAQ. And then the portable comfort control can go anywhere. You can literally walk around the house and have it talk to all these different things. You can see the outside air temperature sensor. You can set up heating and cooling set points. You can see the humidifier set point, all that stuff. Okay, let me take 1 second here. Oops. Look over at the question screen and just see if anybody typed any questions in. And right now we are good. If you have any questions, type them in the bottom right-hand corner where it says either questions or chat box. Type them in there, and I'll do my best to answer them as we go. And if for some reason I can't answer them, then we'll pick up and I'll answer them when I can get back to you with the answer. All right, so the wireless FocusPRO is one way to do it, like we said. The same portable comfort control on the outside air temperature sensor that work with FocusPRO work with the Prestige. And as you remember, the difference is the FocusPRO is 100% wireless, no wires. In addition to talking to an equipment module that controls a furnace and or a humidifier, you can also have it work with a zoning system. So the Honeywell TrueZone panel also has a wireless adapter available for it, and you'll have some wires between the two of those, but they'll be sitting right next to each other on the wall downstairs. And you'll obviously have wires from the zoning panel to the dampers, but all the stats in the space could be 100% wireless. So it should help you improve profit if you can install a zoning system without as much of the labor. And a lot of times, yeah, there's a lot of work in putting the dampers in and getting to some rough spots with the dampers, but the other half of the equation is getting wires chased all over the house. If you can avoid that half of the equation and go wireless, it might make sense for you. And if you want to upgrade from the FocusPRO stats, you can go, like I said, with the Prestige High Definition Color Screen, which is a pretty sexy way to do it. As sexy as thermostats can get, I suppose. You can have all these things working together. So you can have the outside air temperature sensor. You can have the portable comfort control, which is your handheld way to control your system anywhere in your house. You can have the TrueSteam humidifier be hooked up with wireless and the TrueZone zoning panel. And all you need is that one wireless adapter, and those two can tie into that. And obviously your furnace. So this is what a typical equipment interface module might look like. And as you can see on the right-hand side, you got some basic things, hot and common for power. And if you want to split heating and cooling power, you can do that. You'll see on here, it's for the zoning system, it's 2 stages of heat, 2 stages of cooling, and the fan. And there's also RAS, return air sensor. And that's kind of a backup safety mechanism if for some reason you forgot to change all the batteries in your stats or something like that. Or if you went away for a couple months and your batteries died, and you stop talking between your thermostat and your zones, what would happen is then the system would take over and control based on return air temperature. We'll talk about that in a minute. It uses 24-volt AC power just like normal zoning panels use, and this guy will physically wire over to the equipment. So this here just shows you an example of it here. And you guys know how normal wiring goes. So heat 1 is W, heat 2 is W2, fan is G, cooling is Y, and if you have second stage cooling, it's Y2. Return air temperature sensor is 2 wires. Like I said, the return air temperature sensor is a backup. That's only there if after 30 minutes you can't talk to any of the stats for some reason. Then it'll say, okay, all the batteries must be dead, or somebody took them off the wall, or whatever happened. I'm going to go ahead and control the return air temperature because I don't have any other choice. And you don't really set the set points for that. It's basically in kind of a freeze protection mode. It puts in an automatic heating set point of 62 degrees just to make sure your house doesn't freeze. And what is happening here is we don't want it to be too high because we want it to be cold enough that people notice so they go fix their battery problem or whatever it is. But we don't want it to be so cold that stuff breaks, right? Pipes burst or anything like that. And then on the cooling side of the equation, the reason we plug 82 in is the same thing. We want it to be warm enough that you're uncomfortable and you have to go figure out why you didn't change your batteries. But we don't want it to get totally out of control and have humidity become a concern and mold and all that stuff. So we maintain the Energy Star temperatures of 82 and 62 to prevent freezing and over humidity conditions. Once you put batteries back in the stat, in a couple minutes they start talking to the equipment again. Life is good, and return air sensor goes back to being just a fail-safe. The outside air sensor works with any of the systems, the FocusPRO or the Prestige or the zoning panels. And it's very easy to set up, just like all the other wireless stuff. You press one button on the device to link it up to the device you want it to talk to. It does outdoor air temperature and outdoor humidity, so you can see both of those. When you look at your thermostat, you can read the temperature and the humidity in the house. And then you can the temperature and humidity outside of the house, and then you can decide how you're going to dress the kids that day for school or whatever. It runs on 2 AA lithium batteries, and those come included with it. And then obviously you have to change your batteries after a couple of years, maybe not even a couple of years, probably 4 or 5 years. Lithium batteries usually last. It's transmitting every 4 minutes, which is plenty fast for outside air. You could probably do it every 10 minutes and it'd still be fine. And like I said, the batteries will probably last 4 or 5 years. The colder the climate, the less time the batteries last. The warmer the climate, the longer they last. So here in Chicago, it might be more like 4 years. The portable comfort control is a pretty slick device, and it can do lots of different things for different applications. It's a handheld device. It sits about 6 inches tall by 3 inches wide. It's about the size of a TV remote, if you will. Runs on batteries. And what this can be used to do is it can either be used to interrogate your thermostats and override their set points. So if you're sitting on your couch and you want to have this thing sitting next to the TV remote and you're feeling hot or cold, you pick it up, press the button, say I want a colder set point, and it overrides your thermostat and tells it to do that. You could also have it actually be the temperature sensing device. So you could tell it, I want to control to my thermostat, or I want to control to my handheld device. And now my handheld device is the temperature reading. So in this case it says it's 72 in the room. That's the number that gets fed over to the thermostat to make decisions based on, instead of whatever the temperature of that thermostat is that it's reading. On the right-hand side, it shows you a slightly different application. If you look at the bottom of that screen, it's hooked up to a zoning system, or a system that has multiple thermostats that aren't necessarily zoned on the air side, but maybe you have 3 furnaces, each one with its own stat. You could have one portable comfort control talking to all 3 of those guys. In those cases, you cannot make the portable comfort control be the thermostat on a zoning system because he wouldn't know which zone you were physically in, and he wouldn't know which damper to open. But you can still go look at all your zones, all, say, 6 zones you had in your house or whatever it was. You can look at all of them, and you can override their set points. But the sensing point would remain at the thermostat. It's a touchscreen display. It is monochrome, so it's black print on a white background, and it is backlit, so you can use it in the dark for movie theater rooms or anything like that, or on your nightstand at your bedroom or whatever. It's very easy to use. It's very intuitive. It looks like a thermostat when you're pressing buttons on it. Like I said, you can use it for zoned applications or non-zoned applications. It works with the FocusPRO stats or with the Prestige stats. It can be anywhere in the house, and it'll be able to talk to your thermostats. Batteries probably last about 2 years, and you do get a warning light when the batteries are low. Once you replace the batteries, it automatically restores communication. You don't have to set it up again. You set it up once when you buy it, and that's it. You never have to do it again. It takes about 5 minutes for it to resync itself up. It has a paging device, just like the cordless phone at your house used to have. So if you can't find where you left it, you can press a button and have it beep, so you can go find where it is. I'm just checking right now to see if we had any questions typed in, and we do. Let me see if I can click on that and open it up here. Let's see what the question was. The question, where'd it go? Bear with me. Okay. The question is, why do you need a return air temperature sensor? I'm not sure if that was typed in before or after I explained it a little bit. But the reason for the return air temperature sensor is only if for some reason the batteries in your thermostat die and you ignored all the warnings, you didn't change them. So basically you're a snowbird, you go away for the winter, you didn't think to change your batteries before you left, the batteries died, it's now February, your thermostats aren't communicating. After X amount of minutes, the system will say, I can't talk to any thermostats, I don't know what temperature it is, I don't know if the house is going to freeze. Let me look at the return air temperature and see what he says. Oh, he says it's 65? Great, I'm not going to freeze. Oh, he says it's 55? I better go ahead and kick the heat on. So all it is a fail-safe if someone forgets to change their batteries or the batteries die and they're not in town. That's what the return air temperature sensor is for. The other question we had on there is, can this work with a demand response program? I'm assuming you're referring to utility programs. The thermostat itself does not work with a utility demand response program out of the box. Honeywell may have versions of it in certain states where they're doing something, but here in Illinois, I'm not aware of anything that's going on in that regard. All right, so that's the questions. Let's go back over to the presentation here. Like I said, the portable comfort control can sense temperature and become the thermostat if you want it to be. So down there on the bottom of the screen, you see there's a button for thermostat and a button for this device. Right now it says this device, so it's physically controlling to his temperature that it is right there on your nightstand or wherever you have it at. If I press the thermostat button, then it goes back to ignoring this device and using whatever temperature reading it has at the thermostat. Okay. So this is what a system might look like. This is using a non-zoned FocusPRO wireless stat. He is talking wirelessly to the equipment interface module. That module is hardwired to the furnace or the air handler. He's physically sitting next to him there in the basement. And then I could have my portable comfort control talking wirelessly to my stat, and I can have my outside air temperature talking wirelessly to the stat. So the stat is kind of the focal point. He's talking to the equipment module, he's talking to the portable comfort control if I'm using one, and he's talking to the outside air temperature sensor, all three of the devices. If I move over to the Prestige, it works a little bit differently. With the traditional Prestige, he's talking wirelessly to the portable comfort control, he's talking wirelessly to the outdoor air temperature sensor, but he's hardwired to the furnace. Now when the new Prestige IAQ stat comes out this month, it'll be a little bit different, and you won't need the wires between the stat and the furnace. You do still need two wires to the stat, and that might come from the furnace because you need 24-volt power, but maybe you don't want to take it from the furnace because that's a long run. Maybe you want to put it on a small transformer and pull it out of the attic or wherever. So you might not have those wires at all, but it certainly won't be as many wires. It'll be two at the most with the new Prestige IAQ. If I go to a zone type system, once again, portable comfort control is wireless, outside air is wireless. My equipment module, I have one equipment module that's talking wirelessly to my zone stats, in this case 2 zones. And my equipment module is physically wired to my zone panel, which is physically wired to my furnace, which is also wired to my dampers. So it's wireless from the stats down into the mechanical room, but in the mechanical room it's hardwired. And that's okay because really there's not a real difficult time wiring within the mechanical room to the dampers and the panel and everything. The problem is the thermostats, up on the second floor and getting wires down to the basement. That's the part you need the wireless for, and that's where this guy solves those kind of problems. And then if I go to the zone system and I want to have a Prestige IAQ, so in this example maybe I got a Prestige IAQ, a regular Prestige stat, color touchscreen on my first floor, and my second floor maybe I have a FocusPRO because it doesn't really matter as much because no one's upstairs. Downstairs I want to have the Prestige because I want my neighbors to see I'm cool and I have a color touchscreen stat. That guy hardwires down to the zoning panel, but then the other zones upstairs or whatever they're at talk wirelessly into the equipment module. So if they're all FocusPRO, it's wireless from the stats down to the basement. If it's Prestige and FocusPRO mixed, then the Prestige has to wire downstairs, but all the FocusPROs talk wirelessly. So I might have one Prestige and then have 4 FocusPROs for the other zones or something like that. And it can get pretty complicated, and you can get as hairy with it as you want. So if I had more zones, I could simply have more equipment modules to accept those signals in. I don't know how often this would come up, but you could do it. The way these things are typically sold are in kits. This shows you an example of a Prestige high-definition kit. And this is the normal basic system. It comes with the Prestige HD stat, a wireless outdoor air sensor, and a wireless personal comfort controller. That's a typical purchase there. It's a typical scenario. There are other kits you can do. So on the left-hand side here, it shows the FocusPRO kit. So if I don't want the Prestige and I want to go with the regular FocusPRO stats, I still have the personal comfort control. I still have the outside air sensor. I get the FocusPRO stat. Plus, I also have the equipment module that wires in at my furnace. I didn't have that with the Prestige because the Prestige had to wire to the furnace itself. And then I get the return air sensor in case the thermostat should lose batteries. I don't get the return air sensor on the Prestige kit because the Prestige stat does not run on batteries. He has to hardwire for power. And on the right-hand side, it's the same thing, but it's the non-programmable version. And the zoning systems have kits as well. So those come in terms of the equipment module and the thermostat itself. But then you'd still buy the regular TrueZone zoning panels and dampers, right? So what these wireless kits are doing is replacing the thermostat itself. The rest of the zoning kits you still need for the zoning panel and for the dampers, depending on how many zones you have and what sizes they are and all that stuff. And those come in programmable and non-programmable kits as well. So if you're not familiar with the Honeywell part number nomenclature, this is probably a good chart to have handy, although most of you guys probably know Honeywell at this point. If it's a Y pack, meaning the part number starts with a Y, that basically means it's a kit. It has more than one item in it. It has multiple items in the box, so it has a Y at the front to indicate that it's a Y pack, which means kit. The TH model number means that we're talking about some of the thermostat lines. Then that next digit there tells us what we have. So the smaller the number, the simpler it is, and it works its way up. So a 1 is a FocusPRO non-programmable, a 2 is a FocusPRO 5 plus 2-day programmable. And those are the economy models, less features. 3 and 4 are the full versions of those pros. Excuse me, and then 5 and 6 go to the FocusPRO. And then 8 is the Vision Pro, and then 9 is the Vision Pro Total Comfort System, which is basically the Vision Pro IAQ. The next digits indicate the staging of these. So the first one is heat, the second one is cool. So this is a 32. So it's 3-stage heat, 2-stage cool in this example. The 0 means it's a normal stat. 1 would mean it has built-in humidity control on it. Then that next digit, the number there, is the series that it is. So B means it's a battery stat. C means it's a communicating stat. R means it's a wireless RedLink communicating stat, and then so on down the line. Now, like I said, there's the new Prestige IAQ that's coming out this month, and I believe it's actually already here. So I'm saying coming out, but it's probably physically in our warehouse if I walked back there and looked. If you remember the regular Prestige, I kept saying over and over again, it's wireless accessories, but hardwired stat, right? So it has to wire to the furnace, but the accessories are all wireless. Well, that's different with the Prestige IAQ. He truly is wireless. He is using wireless communication to talk down to the equipment module at the furnace and tell him to go into heating or cooling or which stage and so on down the line. He does not require any wires between the furnace and the stat. However, the stat does require 24-volt power. So I can either have 2 wires going down to the furnace to steal his power like I would on a normal stat, but just those 2 wires and no other wires needed. Or I can get a separate transformer and steal power from a closer source, from a 110 source or somewhere else. Right? So it's 2-wire stat in that regard, which is nice because now you can retrofit it on any other stat application that you have. Take the old stat off the wall, and chances are you got 3 or 4 wires already there anyway. He can control a humidifier. He can control a dehumidification sequence for a furnace or a variable speed fan coil. He can enable an ERV or something like that. And he has an outdoor air temperature sensor and the personal comfort controller. The website, Honeywell has a lot of websites, and this one here, which is forwardthinking.honeywell.com, is a fantastic website for any of the, I'm going to say, non-traditional product lines. So, you know, you're not going to go in there and find your electromechanical thermostat, right? Well, you probably could. But all your newer, cooler things like ERVs, dehumidifiers, steam humidification, zoning systems, wireless stuff, all that's going to be on this website, forwardthinking.honeywell.com. It's both for contractors and consumers. All the sales glossy type literature is there. The install manuals are all there. Almost every product has some kind of video training on there, so you can look at that. So it's a pretty good website. And then speaking of training, here at HVAC Solutions and our sister companies, we do a lot of training. We do about 300 training classes a year, and we have, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 training centers, I believe, maybe 7. So every Monday, as you probably know, we're doing a webinar, including this one here. So there's a webinar every Monday. Next Monday is high efficiency boilers. We have a hands-on training lab in Melrose Park that has both airside equipment, furnaces and condensing units, as well as hydronic systems, boilers and chillers and water heaters. And then that's in Melrose Park. And then in Lansing, we have another hands-on lab that has, once again, furnaces and air conditioners. And then instead of having a hydronic plant, it has rooftop equipment. We also have a mobile showcase truck that every month has different equipment on it. So if you need us to take some classes to you, we can probably do that. It's got, you know, full AV systems and all that stuff. Here's all the webinars we have. We've made it through most of the year here, but if you look over here, November 15th is the next one, high efficiency boilers. And then after that, it'll be ERVs. This is just to give you an idea of the breadth of stuff we handle here. This is our line card. It's quite vast these days. With that, I'm going to look over and see if I have any other questions I need to answer for you guys. So let's see. Okay, I don't see any new questions on there. I'll leave this up for a minute or two. If anybody has any questions, please type them in, and I'll do my best here to answer them for you. Like I said, this presentation has been recorded, so I'll get it posted up onto the internet here very shortly. And if you need to get on it or you have a coworker who needs to see it, just let me know and I'll send you the link to it and you can have them jump on there. So I don't see any last questions. So with that, I will go ahead and shut it down. If you do have any other questions, down in that question chat box, you'll see Greg Jutris's contact information. He would be the point of contact for Honeywell, but you're also welcome to contact me. My phone number is 708-670-6383. Once again, 708-670-6383. And my email is Ryan, RYAN.Hoger, Hoger, at HVACsolutions.com, just like the end of Greg's email there on the screen. With that, I thank you for your time, and if you need to get access to the recorded version, please let me know and I'll send you over a link. Thank you very much.